So I made a video a while back called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of Tekken 8. And it's like a really good video. It's like the best video you ever seen. You should go watch it. It jumps off the screen and blows you. And in that video, I go over the good things, bad things, and the ugly things of Tekken 8. You know, kind of in the title, but whatever. But because that video was going over so many things, I couldn't really go into detail of any one specific thing. I just had to sort of touch on them and move on. And one of the things in that video that I kind of felt bad about not being able to go into more detail about was Jin's arc. So that's what this video's doing right here, right now. The one you're watching. So in this video, I'm going to go into more detail about some of the things that I said in that video, as well as adding a few more things that I just straight up didn't touch on at all. And basically, we're going to go over the serious issues that I have with Jin's arc as a whole. I am going to go over some good things here and there. I'm not just going to bash his fucking arc for the entire video, but that's, you know, kind of the title. You clicked on it, your fault. So let's get started. So in case you haven't seen the original video, just to summarize, my basic point was despite Jin's arc being done relatively well, like his journey from point A to point B and the changes they want to make in his character do make sense. My issue is that where his journey ends up by the end of Tekken 8 was less interesting than he was as a character before Tekken 8 ever released. So basically what I mean by that is before Tekken 8 there were three basic traits that Jin had that defined his character as a whole. The first one being his self-imposed isolation. At the end of Tekken 3, Jin learned about the Devil Gene, and from that point on he kind of felt that he was too dangerous and evil and this horrible being, and he didn't want to endanger any of his friends. So he basically cut them all off. We're talking about people like Horang and Xiao Yu. He didn't want to have anything to do with anyone who was in his previous life. And this was a very important aspect of his character as it put him on the path that eventually led to the events of Tekken 6. Jin is a very negative, self-destructive character, and without anyone around him to ground him, he's just basically left to his own devices to go down whatever path he would naturally go down, which would be one of self-destruction. This decision by him is what allowed the version of him in Tekken 3 to become the version of him that we eventually get in Tekken 6, who basically starts World War III and causes all kind of horrible shit across the world. The second defining trait is his suicidal tendency. There's really no other way to say it. Jin wants to kill himself. He believes that the Mishima blood is inherently evil, and he wants to eliminate it from the world, him included. He's on a self-destructive suicide mission, essentially, to wipe out his grandfather, father, and then himself. He believes that he and his family are a plague upon this world, and he doesn't want to curse them with his existence. And the last defining trait that arguably allowed the first two traits to even come to fruition in the first place is the inherent anger and hatred that exists within this character. And more important than that, his willingness to act upon that anger and hatred. This part of his character goes all the way back to his initial introduction in Tekken 3. After the death of his mother, he essentially beelines it in one direction towards Ogre to wipe Ogre off the face of the earth. This is understandable, right? He wants revenge, fine, okay. However, how he does this is by going to Heihachi and unlearning his mother's martial arts, which is a very defensive, peaceful form of martial arts, to learn the Mishima style, which is a far more aggressive, murderous type of fighting style. A lot of people like to ignore this aspect of Jin's character when they talk about how out of character he acted in Tekken 7 when he started World War III, but this part of his character was always there. I mean, it's kind of a big deal for him to be entirely willing to unlearn the fighting style that his mother taught him while he's trying to avenge his mother. He willingly lets go of the only thing that he has from her. In Tekken 4, he mercilessly hunts down Kazuya, someone he's never met before and doesn't know he's evil, for the sole purpose of wiping out the Mishima bloodline, solely because Kazuya is a part of that bloodline. In Tekken 5, he goes after Jinpachi, an innocent man who is under the possession of an evil demon. And again, Jin doesn't ask any questions. He doesn't try to find out who Jinpachi is or what's going on. All he knows is that that is someone who he needs to kill if he wants to wipe out the Mishima bloodline. These three traits together is what leads to Tekken 6, him taking over the Mishima Zaibatsu and essentially turning it on the entire world, for the sole purpose of wiping out the Devil Gene, which has been his goal since Tekken 4. His isolation, self-destructive tendencies, drive towards his goal, and hatred for that goal that he is going towards all put him on a path from being the character we knew in Tekken 3 to the character we know in Tekken 6. While I don't believe that storyline was always written particularly well, or that his character always smoothly transitioned from one point to another, I never really felt that it didn't make sense. It was going down a believable path for this character. What Tekken 8 does is actually very skillfully address every one of these traits, these damaging traits that Jin has, and has him not only face these parts of himself, but overcome them. By the end of Tekken 8, he doesn't have any of these traits anymore. And that particular part of his arc was done very well. The problem is, he's fucking boring now. Those 3 defining character traits is what made Jin so interesting in the first place. By taking all of those things away and not properly replacing them with something else just as interesting, you just stripped away all the depth the character had. By the end of Tekken 8, he's just a basic good guy who wants to do the right thing and protects his friends. That's his main goal, is to protect his friends. This is fucking Tekken. It's not Dragon Tales, it's not Care Bears. That's a fucking stupid motivation for the main character of Tekken. I'm sorry, and it's not interesting at all. People have given me shit in the past for thinking that I believe that in order for a character to have depth, they have to have some kind of dark side or evil side within their character. And then I think Jin is a worse character now just because he's good and not evil, which I personally find more interesting. But I call bullshit poppycock on that. I made a whole video praising how amazing Captain America's character is in the Marvel movies and just in general. Captain America is about as good of a character as you could possibly get. You don't get much more pure than the heart of America in a person. My issue with what they did with Jin's character is not that they turned him into a good guy. A redemption arc is fine. My issue is them removing all of his interesting character traits and not replacing them with anything else just as interesting. They don't replace it with anything at all, really. Literally the only thing he has now is the desire to protect his friends. And it doesn't come from anywhere interesting. My issue is that they removed things from his character and didn't add anything. The trade-off wasn't worth it. I just wish that the superior writing that Tekken 8 has clearly been written with, as opposed to previous Tekken games, was used to bring his character in a more interesting direction, not a less interesting direction, which is what they ended up doing. Jin's issue throughout the entire Tekken franchise is that he was too much of a complex character for the style of writing that they would write these games in. You just knew as you were watching all these games story play out that the writing was not up to the quality needed to support a character that had this much going on. And now finally, when the writing is actually of a pretty decent quality, that's when he becomes the most boring he's ever been. And if it was up to me to choose a really interesting character that wasn't written all that great, or a really well written character that was just kind of boring, I'd rather have the interesting character, because a boring, bland, generic, well written story is still boring, bland, and generic. Alright, so that's the part of the video that's going over stuff that I've already kind of touched on in my previous Tekken videos. Now I'm going to talk about the most important flaw that exists within his arc in Tekken 8, and the reason why I think overall at the end of the day when you look at it, his character arc and his redemption arc doesn't really work. Before Tekken 8 came out, a lot of people were complaining that Miguel was not in the game, and they felt like his hatred towards Jin was necessary for the kind of story that they were going for in this game. In that video, I kind of addressed this by saying that it's not 100% necessary for Miguel to be in the game, as long as there is someone in the game to force Jin to come face to face with the crimes that he committed in the past. And I said that they could probably use Alyssa to do the exact same thing. And I theorized that they would use Alyssa to do exactly that. And at the time, to me, that made perfect sense. Alyssa was someone who was brainwashed and mind controlled by Jin, built as a weapon of war, and forced to attack her only friend that she had in this world. He deeply wronged her, and for her to be an ally of his in this game, I figured it just made sense that he would have to come face to face with her and have some kind of conversation about how he wronged her. This would have worked fine, and it would have made it so that Miguel doesn't necessarily have to be in the game, as long as someone is the voice of his past crimes. The problem is that Tekken 8 doesn't do this. It doesn't do this for Alyssa, and it doesn't do this for anybody else in the entire game. Jin goes through the entirety of Tekken 8, his whole character arc from beginning to end, his redemption arc, without ever having to come face to face with any of the crimes he did in 6 that caused the redemption arc to be necessary. No one in the entire story holds Jin accountable for the things that he's done. And this is the biggest flaw that exists within Tekken 8's story, specifically revolving around Jin's arc. Jin clearly holds himself accountable. He's dealing with the guilt of the stuff that he did, and he questions whether or not he's even worthy of redemption. And that's all good and nice and everything, but he's the only one asking those questions. Everybody else around the entire world, every single character in the story, has completely 100% forgiven him for all of his crimes, without him having to do anything to justify it. There are characters within this game that he has deeply wronged, that at no point even have a conversation with Jin about it. It's not brought up at all. And it's not just named characters, it's everybody. At one point in the game, there's a tournament, and he comes out and he has to fight and all that kind of stuff, and there's a massive audience in the Roman Coliseum right before this fight. And as he comes out to fight Leroy Smith, the entire crowd, the whole Coliseum, cheers that Jin is about to come out and fight people. This happens twice, where there are whole crowds of people cheering on Jin as he enters an arena to fight during during the tournament. They are cheering on the man who just started World War III like a year prior to this and is responsible for the highest death count that the world has ever seen. Let me ask you something. Do you think that if Hitler survived World War II and then in 1946 we took him over to America, put him in a boxing ring, and then started selling tickets, that everybody would be cheering his name? No, it's fucking ridiculous. People would be absolutely outraged man is not in prison or executed. What the fuck are we even talking about? It makes no sense that Jin is as supported as he is throughout this entire game. The UN should want to lock him in prison for life. The people should hate him, throw shit at him as he walks through the streets. Everyone across the entire planet should absolutely despise this man, the same way we despise someone like Hitler. But they don't. And it doesn't make a lick of fucking sense. This one factor is absolutely devastating to his arc. For one, we have no idea why he wants to change as a person. By the end of Tekken 6, he was still evil. In Tekken 7, he had like 2 scenes, and there's no scenes there saying that he's not evil anymore. At the very beginning of Tekken 8, he wants to do the right thing and he's feeling guilt for all the stuff he did previously. But we didn't see a single scene to kickstart this belief in him. Why does he suddenly feel guilt? What happened to make him feel this way? What was the event that happened to Jin that caused his character to change direction? We don't know. There's a 6-month time skip between 7 and 8, and apparently at some point there, he changed his mind about everything, but we have no idea why. All you needed in this game is one single scene with Jin coming face to face with something horrible that he did. It didn't even have to be Miguel or Alyssa. It could have been something as simple as him walking through a city that he saw devastated by the war that he caused, and then the people in that town looking at him like he was a monster, for him to finally change his mind. Something so simple, but there's nothing. So the arc feels like it's just happening because this is where the writers want him to go, not because it's naturally being brought to that direction. So while certain aspects of his character actually do have the proper development they need to get him from point A to point B, the whole journey that he goes on from the start of Tekken 8 that causes him to change those traits doesn't have anything back in it. The most important journey of the entire story doesn't have a reason to exist. And even if they decided in Tekken 9 to bring back Miguel and to have Miguel go after him and have him face his demons then, that wouldn't make Tekken 8's story better. His arc is over. He already went through the change that he was supposed to go through in this story. You can't bring up Miguel now. He's already forgiven himself for all the shit that he did to Miguel, despite never actually facing Miguel or having to deal with it. Easily the biggest flaw in the entire game as far as Jin's arc is concerned. Anyway, that's going to be it from me. I hope you enjoyed the video. Oh, also, for this video, I actually changed the way that I record it. I'm using a different recording technique. So do me a favor, if you've seen my previous videos, go down in the comments and tell me, is the audio better for this one? Is this preferred? Or do y'all prefer the way I recorded audio before? Or does it just sound the exact same and you haven't noticed difference? I have had people tell me in the past that the audio sounds very strange when they're listening in headphones or something like that. So just let me know if this is the preferred method. If so, I'll keep doing it this way. But yeah, that's going to be it. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, hit that little notification bell icon because you won't get notified if you don't hit the bell icon. And y'all be safe out there, you hear?